Has on. It's good. I like
Exactly.
CLSC.
I sold post. All right, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 7:03 p.m. Jill, if you would do the roll call, please.
Okay. Let's see, Councilmember Frank Walsh. Councilmember Ryan Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Tuan Fielding.
Here.
Councilmember Sarah Mack. Councilmember Paul Tamburino.
I'm here.
Councilmember George Palmer. Councilmember Emily Broom. Councilmember Jack Handigan. Councilmember Doris Grant.
She's here. She's on.
Councilmember, yeah, thank you. Yep, Councilmember Becca.
Here.
White. Yep, that was Councilmember Becca White. Councilmember Moya Yamaguchi. Councilmember Jerome Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Eduardo Curry. And Councilmember Marisol Bailey.
All right, thank you. So officially, we do not have a quorum. We require 7 of our members to constitute a quorum. But as I stated before, it's my prerogative to continue with the meeting and follow the agenda. What separates this, for those of you who are unaware, because we don't have a quorum, we're not able to what we call conduct business. And that really means it really is limited to we can't make motions and we can't pass any motions. So, you know, when we say we can't conduct business, we're going to do a lot of business. We're just not going to formalize anything by taking votes and committing any decisions to the record. I do want to hear from our speakers. I want to hear from the public. And I think we have a few things, you know, as council members, we want to discuss among ourselves and with the police department. So with that said, I'd like to welcome everybody for coming. Thank you for taking your time. I definitely appreciate it. I know, you know, beyond the police department, you know, we're all volunteers, and even the folks at the police department, this is after hours for you all. So we appreciate the time you spend in collaboration with us. This is my first meeting as the chair. I thank our past chair, Ms. Tuan Fielding, for giving me this privilege of carrying on. Hopefully I halfway live up to her legacy, and she's here to make sure I do at least half as much. So it's good to have her. As well as Vice Chair Harris. I will say, just like during my time as vice chair with Tuan, she brought me along the whole way. I've got Jerry now doing the same thing for me. So even though he's vice chair, he still leads me along pretty well, and I appreciate that. So what I first want to do is I'm going to make it, you know, we can't vote on anything, so I get to do it. We're just going to amend the agenda just a little bit because, you know, we do require community participation. That is an important part of any governmental organization, even a committee like ours, is without public feedback, we're in an echo chamber. So we publish the fact that we'd like the public to participate. We make an invitation and they can submit their requests in advance. And I believe this evening we had one person submit. Jill, I'm going to turn that over to you if you don't mind.
Yes, we have Miss Suzanne Hardy present. So Miss Hardy, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now, and you have 2 minutes, please, which is the standard time for comment. So asking to unmute.
Hello, I'm
Yes.
standing under a street light, so forgive me, it may take me a little longer because I'm having trouble seeing. Tonight you're going to hear the presentation from CPD on the status of the racial bias audit and the high number of completions. Unfortunately, we haven't heard anything about the status of racial disparities or any intent to address these in the future. Recall the impetus for our community to fight for the audit was specifically to address the unfair and disparate treatment of Black persons in Charleston, for whom we had heard hundreds of stories. We did not call for a general audit, but one specifically to understand why the disparities and to significantly reduce them. CPD's data continues to show that if you're Black in Charleston, you're 3 times more likely to be stopped, arrested, or cited than your white counterparts. This is so for motor vehicle stops, use of force, alcohol and marijuana offenses, etc. Public contact stops show 57% are Black persons, and the total number of stops has increased by 2,000 between 21 and 22. And clearly this is unacceptable. I separately submitted questions to the chair that we, CAJM, would like to have answered from CPD on the audit. But here I want to highlight communications and an opportunity. On the dashboard, specifically, the actions do not address the intent of CNA's recommendation to understand or reduce racial disparities, nor do they provide the databases for compliance. I shared examples with the chair and Captain Cretella. Specifically, there's no way to support that the action is in compliance when there's no data, no discussion, no facts relevant to why that conclusion is justified. And none of the actions noted as in full compliance show the impact or any connection to racial disparities. Also, the intent from CNA's recommendation was to always involve the community to get their input and alignment to CPD's interpretation of completion. When and where is that going to happen? My community is not aware of any attempts, and we do not agree with CPD's interpretations. This is the offer for help. If CPAC and CPD need help to truly engage the community, CAJM could be willing to work with other stakeholders as we did in the early days with CNA to bring this to life. So I leave that with you, and thank you for letting me provide comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harding. And for the rest of the council, I think we have a section in our agenda where I will address an update from a meeting with the CAJM. I don't know how they pronounce their acronym, the Charleston Area
CAJM.
Justice Ministry. So we are going to take some time to discuss some updates on the meeting that Jerry and I had with them, as well as some subsequent notes that we have. So we will address that under section 8, if that's okay. All right. We're going to skip approval of the minutes because we don't have a quorum to be able to vote on that. Next, I'm going to turn to probably one of the most important topics of the evening. Steve, this is you.
Yes, sir. So I did speak with Jillian earlier today. We do have a meeting set with the mayor. I believe it's on the 23rd to discuss this very issue about the issues we're having with membership. He is, of course, aware of that. He has been for quite some time. But this will be the first face-to-face meeting to address the issue. And I believe either the chief or one of the deputy chiefs will also be present at the meeting. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We haven't made any decisions on that. Of course, we're open to any suggestions you have. I have communicated with the council members for the vacant positions, and I haven't been successful in filling those positions to date. So definitely something has to happen. We'll be working on that on the 23rd.
See, the only thing I would recommend is, as much as possible, make sure you include somebody from this committee because it's ours, right? And we can give you as much recommendations on what we're looking for. Also, I would suggest that you can do it or I can do it. Put the mayor on notice that look at the participation tonight and the absentees. I'm going to have my list. Jill's going to update me from this meeting, and I intend to execute a vote at the next meeting to remove any members that do not comply with the 3 absent rule. Okay. I have zero patience for that. So I'm not going to give leeway. They've had a year or two of leeway, done. So I'm going to enforce that. We've reached out. I will say to the council, and guys, it'll be your vote, right? It's not my decision to make. It'll be my decision to bring it to a vote. What I will say is we sent out the note of this meeting like we do other meetings, and only one person sent me a note back, and I don't know if any of you got any notes. Only one person, our high school student, sent me a note to explain that she would not be able to attend because she has conflicting engagement with an academic bowl. This 16-year-old has participated in more meetings than our adult members, even having her mom sit in a parking lot at the police academy every session waiting for her to participate. That's the kind of investment we get from 16-year-old, but not adults who volunteer to be on here. So if they can't meet that, you may want to let the different council members know, Steve, if you want to get with Jill on the attendance and let them know that, this, it's not good for their representatives that they've appointed to be voted out by us. So they may want to reach out to them directly. Jerry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the chairman's request, I asked to be included in the Public Safety Committee meeting that was held on Monday. Per my conversation with the chair, I did highlight the fact that there were vacancies on CPAC. Also asked the public members of the Public Safety Committee to be certain to be in communications with their members so that they could be informed of what it is that we're doing. I believe I saw a communication. Jill, I think, was given a copy of the latest, attendance and vacancy roster that she shared with the mayor. And I believe he sent a communication out requesting names and nominations from members of the city council who had not appointed individuals.
Including the chair of the Public Safety Committee, right?
That's correct.
Now, I will tell everybody that I did receive, subsequent to that meeting, I did receive a note from the mayor. Steve, I think you were copied on it. And Jerry, I know I forwarded you a copy. And Chief, I know you were copied on it, where the mayor, so let's be fair. The mayor has sent a note indicating this is a priority, that he plans on working with Steve and the city council members to have those vacancies filled or the nominations available for the February 28th meeting of the city council so they can be ratified. So what I would say to you is I imagine based on that, they're really turning the screws to make sure, behind the scenes, they won't include us during the process, which I respect. I believe those vacancies will probably get filled. Steve, what I'm asking you to do is be proactive with the rest of them, because, everybody's going to celebrate, we filled those 4 or 5 vacancies, but bam, now we may have 4 or 5 more. And then it's back to the drawing board. I'd rather be as upfront and transparent as possible. Something also important to know, the terms for the high school students, they were supposed to be high school seniors for 1 year only. Moyu, who's been our best, next to me and Twan and Jerry and Ryan, people here, she was appointed as a sophomore in high school, completely violating our terms, but she was great. She was really involved. But her 1 year term ended a long time ago. So we really have more than just one high school student we need to replace. The other one, I don't think we ever met her. So hopefully they do a better job with the high school students. So Steve, that's I know you've got that. If you need my assistance, obviously, I'm not shy about speaking up where I need to get this done. Chief, I know you and I have talked about it, and it's your wholehearted intent to be probably as aggressive as I am, because this committee works in your favor as well. So I appreciate that. Any questions or comments on that? Jill,
One other question for
Sure.
Steve. I know there was also earlier some conversation about perhaps changing some of the composition and addressing some issues in terms of the guidelines. Is that part of your conversation on the 23rd?
The mayor will drive that conversation. I'm not sure which direction he's going at this point, but it's all on the table as far as trying to make this work, improve it. So I don't know for sure, but we're going to have that discussion on the 23rd.
I know it's been discussed, and I know the chief and I have talked about it, and I've heard his commentary, and a lot of people have commentary that you don't want a committee so big that you have these issues. The flip side of that is we have a lot of areas on the racial bias audit and different areas of focus in our mission that having having a committee with 16 or 17 is almost needed so that we can have a division of labor so that the same 3 or 4 people aren't sitting on every committee. It would be my goal to have completely different people focused on each of the committees so that the volunteers, we want to reduce the amount of time our volunteers have to commit. And if you shrink the committee, then we need to participate in all of it and you burn people out. This is a volunteer group. So where I would normally not want a bigger committee. In this case, the number they have, I would prefer to stick with. It gives you representation across each of the different districts, the high school students, and it gives us enough people to work with to man these committees. And that's just my opinion on that. Steve, you'll take that to the mayor, and Chief, I think you'll probably have a bigger say on that. So you've heard, my concern with that. If you could convey that on my behalf.
I do believe that's his inclination. Essentially what you just said in terms of the size of the group, even though we've talked about making it smaller. I think if I could paraphrase a little bit that we've talked about that part of it, I think he's more inclined to agree with what you just said.
I appreciate it. I mean, you can share my logic for it. It's just, it's hard to do policy subcommittee and communication subcommittee. And we've already, because nobody shows up to any of them, we've already had to combine motor vehicle stop with policy. And I don't want those two to be combined if we can help it. Right. And we still have 2 other committees we should be funding. There really needs to be, we've got a couple of the charters in our mission that we've not been addressing. And, one of those is, the citizen complaints. We've not even been addressing that. And those are things in your audit that are really important. And we want to make sure we've got a group that's helping, just working with your team to focus on that. So that's kind of our goal. All right, guys. Let me see. Jill, if you want to talk about the racial bias audit update.
Sure, I can provide that. And if it's okay with you, Chairman, I'd like to also cover the third-party oversight update on behalf of Captain Cortella.
Yeah, I think Tony I think he defaulted that to you, didn't he?
Well, he like
He's had a busy week.
So the formal status of the racial bias audit implementation of the recommendations. Currently, there are 37 recommendations that have reached the status of full compliance with an annual review. So those are recommendations that, even though there has been an effort made to achieve them, they still require annual review to keep tabs on where they are as times change. Some examples of where that would come into play is reviewing important policies like the response to resistance policy or the Office of Internal Affairs policy. Beyond that, 33 recommendations have reached the status of full compliance. That means, and there's no need to review. Normally, those are situations where there was a statement or a narrative that needed to be added to specific policies. For example, the sanctity of life statement that needed to be added to the response to resistance policy, and the lethal or less than lethal weapons policy. And so there's no more beyond what we find out in the review that is forthcoming. There's no more at this time that can be done with those 33. Those are considered fully completed. And there is, getting to the status of the third-party oversight update, the one remaining recommendation that is still in progress is to secure and complete the third-party evaluation of the audit. And at this time, I think, we've said it in other forums this week, the CPD has identified a state university that it would like to work with to perform this evaluation and review for us. Over the last few months, there have been back and forth discussions regarding the contract and what would be provided. We're now at the stage where we're cautiously optimistic that we have an agreement that will be presented to City Council at their next meeting for approval, and then the work will begin in earnest. And we hope that will take place very soon in March. And at that point, as was said earlier, that is the stage where we're going to be able to review the progress that has been made and whether the efforts that have been made fully comply with recommendations and where we need to go from there.
All right, I appreciate that. Now, I did, you made a good point that this has been talked about a lot this week, right? I know it was talked about at the at the public safety meeting. And then I understand that it got pretty intense at the council meeting. And Jerry, I know you were there, and I've since watched it. And what I would say, coming from CPAC, and I'll let the rest of y'all weigh in as well, but I want to give my points from watching it. And Chief, I heard, you and Tony, and my takeaway is not so much a takeaway, is it's kind of a reinforcement of some of the questions that I heard. Is you've got a racial bias audit, and you've got your matrix, and I'm all too familiar with, here are the requirements, what's the status of each requirement, how much have we met. You're showing, we've checked the box for 98% of them. I am the exact opposite of saying, for me, checking the box is always just, okay, met expectations, or hey, we just got it done, which I know you guys are going above and beyond that. I think the way to solve the dilemma that you're running into in the communications gap, because I believe there's a communications gap between saying we've got 98% completed. They're never going to be completed. It's saying that the steps in place to now be able to track the progress of this, because it's not done. When you mark something as done, we don't have to talk about it again. It's completed. These will be in progress, right? So we have 98% in a position to now be tracked for the progress, because we've put in place those recommendations. Doesn't mean the recommendations work, doesn't mean the execution is completely fulfilled. And I heard a lot of the pushback, we need numbers, we need this. Well, I get that too, because that's, I think, the whole point in the communication gap is you can't just say you're done without numbers that show, because the whole point of this is to be able to show progress, right? And the progress isn't checking the box. The progress is, what is the outcome? And sometimes I think Tony's frustration was it's too short of a period of time. We've not been collecting a lot of the data for that long. We didn't have it available. Now we can start. And I understand the public saying, you guys have known about this for 4 years. You've known about it for 4 years. And now, you're saying we just started. I know you haven't just started, but when you communicate these out, from my perspective, if you aren't showing, hey guys, we enacted that, what's the impact that changing the statement of sanctity of life has had? That's one of those where, how do you measure that, right? That's, I don't even know why they would throw that on an audit, but it is what it is. It was on there. So maybe that one's a checkbox. But some of those are very clearly where your metrics are supposed to reflect a change in the results of racial bias, right? If there's 67% traffic stop, or whatever the presumptive stops, that's going to be a number people are going to be measuring you by. We all know that. I mean, I'm not a police officer. I'm not a data collection guy. I just know that as a layperson, like any of these things, I want to see, starting that day to today, you've done all these wonderful things. Has anything changed? Yeah. Chief, I heard you, and I did, I love what you say, that all these other communities are reaching out, and these other departments are reaching out and using Charleston as a model. That's not the communication. To me, the communication as a citizen is why? Because you're not selling them your policy, you're selling them the results. And that's what they're attracted to. They're attracted to your recruiting numbers, that you're recruiting the right people. You're attracted to, hey, we've got these policies in place and it's resulted in this. That's the only reason why people are going to use you as a model. And that's what I think that from my perspective as CPAC, and helping, our job is to help communicate this to the public so that they understand a police department they don't truly understand, right? The more you tell them that narrative, and the more you can publish results, right? The result isn't an audit checklist, which is good. It's a tracking measurement, but you've got to have the narrative behind it to show, what does this translate to? And I'll let it go there. Before I turn it over to the chief, because I'm certainly going to let him address this. Any other council members want to speak to this? No, I was long-winded enough. Okay, Chief, I'm going to let you. This is outside of your normal message. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about this one.
Yeah, there's a couple things I would say. One, I have emphatically said from day one, and I just, with all due respect, nothing that we're doing is checking the box. I am very adamant about that. Some of these briefings where Tony goes over the number, we have to track the things that CNA outlined in the audit, the main sections, the subsections, the different things that are in the audit. There's so much more to this, and we'll never be done. And I don't think we'll ever have the numbers that will make everybody happy, nor will we have everything done by a certain date. The one thing that I don't think we've done very well that has come out, it certainly came out in the Public Safety Committee meeting, it came out in the overall council meeting on Tuesday, is that there's a strong interest in talking about the disparities. And so we'll do that. And so within the next month, I've tasked Jillian and Captain Bruder and Dr. Alpert, actually Dr. Aitzen, Jill and Dr. Alpert from USC, and others who have a whole lot of experience with disparity. I frankly don't, in terms of data and science and analytics, which is really what we're talking about. There's a lot of people that really want to simplify it and say, you just need to make these numbers look better. And that's not the goal. And there's a lot of research that points towards why disparities occur, putting a context on them, putting a frame around them, et cetera, et cetera. So we will be doing that. What I got out of the Public Safety Committee, and Jerry's been talking about this for a while. It's not a new topic, but we didn't have a lot of data when we started this. We have more data. We still need more data. I have the same questions, and we are going to have an open discussion. We will address that head on, and we will illuminate what the disparities are and what they mean at this point, which frankly, I think is going to lead to more questions, and outline why do those disparities exist, and just address the question. It's a big question. It's important to a lot of people. It's important to me. So I think that's where we're at. I don't have a easy solution. I have a dog that's running around the house with all kinds of stuff in her mouth. But anyways, it's noted, duly noted by me, that people are becoming very impatient because we're addressing all these pieces of the audit, but we've not talked about racial disparities specifically. So we're going to do that.
And I think, what I would be fair to say is it was called a racial bias audit, not a policing audit. And it's and remember, whenever the topic's going to come up about racial bias, and that's what they were talking about in the racial bias audit, and the city's investing money for a third party to evaluate that. Everybody that attends any one of those meetings or has an interest in the subject is going to be more interested in when that's a focused meeting. That's a focused topic. They're going to be more interested in what's the disparity, the racial breakdown on drunk driving versus we've reduced drunk driving in the city altogether. Okay, well, we like that. Chief, that's your overall role. You've got to reduce crime in every demographic, right? And you're trying to prevent crime and keep the public safe. But then when you have that focused topic of racial, that's when we have to throw on, okay, so not only are we reducing alcohol, if I had 500 traffic stops and 350 were from the Black community, and then you tell me, well, we dropped to 400 traffic stops and 348 of the Black community. Yeah, we've dropped traffic stops, but the racial disparity never changed. And I think we've been hearing that drop. And I know when Jason prepared his briefing for us on motor vehicle stops, we threw that in, and he was able to throw in the racial side of it. Is we know the overall numbers, but one of our missions is really to look at the racial disparity side of it to say, is it starting to balance out and come a little bit closer to what generally the numbers should reflect, right? I mean, they're not always going to be dead on. And I just think that's probably where you guys got caught. I mean, I'm not going to say you got caught, but I think that's what the big churn was in the public safety and the city council is there's a lot of public members saying there's a lot of money being thrown at this. There's a lot of time being thrown at this. There's a lot of, I'm not from you because you're certainly invested, but the city's put a lot of lip service into it. 4 years later, people are starting to now say, when can we see the results of it? And that's really what
And
they're.
the only thing I'll just say is, I do not like the term lip service. I don't like the term check the box.
Well, I'm going to use
We
it. I'm going
have
to tell you,
embraced
Chief,
this audit. I
those
asked for the audit.
those were terms not used by you, but at the city council meeting, if you go back, I just watched it a few hours ago. And it wasn't you. It wasn't you. And it wasn't Tony. I kept hearing over and over again because I kept going, why are they calling it a checkbox? Different city council members kept saying, you check the box, you check the box. And that term drives me nuts because nobody's trying to check a box. You didn't say it. So you're not correcting
There's
me.
a lot
I
of
did
people
hear
that
it.
say
It
a lot
wasn't
of
from
things,
you.
and let me just say very quickly and concisely, I asked for the audit. I've embraced the audit from day one. It's made us better. There's more questions that have come out of the audit that weren't even in the audit. We've increased the number of questions. We've increased the data. We've increased the body of knowledge, and we need to have a conversation specifically about this area. And I would just caution you or anybody that would say, we need to even the numbers up. We need to make them look better. We need to somehow get a better formula. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we do policing properly, which we know we can do better. There's all kinds of areas that we can do better in. We're trying to treat people with dignity and respect, and we want to protect and serve our communities. We know that there are race issues in our profession, and I'm going to hit on some of those, not the least of which this past couple of weeks was the killing of Tyree Nichols by police officers. So it's a big issue. We have to address it head on. But I caution that there's not going to be like a formula, and we're not going to say, okay, we made the numbers look better, and all of a sudden, like, we're done. It's an ongoing effort. We embrace it. It's important. I can't tell you how important it is to me. This is part of my legacy. It's really important to me for the community, for all the right reasons of integrity, et cetera, et cetera.
And everything I've heard from the public, they all trust your sincerity and the results that you've already had. What I would say is the numbers will never match, but you still will have to show. I mean, I'm not directing you, but I'm just saying overall, the whole theme is the numbers have to be shown no matter what. And yes, you're gonna have a narrative. Look, guys, we're not talking about depolicing, right? We're not saying, well, we're just going to stop arresting people and we'll make our numbers look good. Nobody does that.
They do that, Paul. There's jurisdictions have done that.
Well,
and not only have they not made the numbers better, the numbers have actually gotten worse, and the community's less safe.
There's nobody that I've talked to in the city of Charleston. I mean, I'll talk to everybody. Obviously, nobody's advocating that. So you know that. You can throw
but other jurisdictions have done that. I'm telling you, to make the numbers look better, and it's actually made it worse.
Sure. Well, to quote Deputy Chief Walker, we're talking about City of Charleston, and we care about City of Charleston and what you're doing here. We know what you're doing. We know you're doing great things. The quicker that numbers, whether they tell the right story, the wrong story, or whatever, the public is until we show those. I mean, yes, you're going to have to work harder to build, to explain them and explain just like what you did, right? Just like you did. They're not going to go down. Own it. You're good at owning it, but them not seeing it, the narrative is lost without both pieces of it, right? That was from the city council members. That was from Cajun. That's from everybody that we deal with is the same thing. It's like, until we can see it, it didn't happen, right? We know it can happen. It's happening. I know I've beaten a dead horse on that. Does anybody else, Jerry?
I defer to see whether or not Tuan or Doris have anything to say before I'm saying anything.
Yeah, please. Anybody. Come on.
No, I was really listening because we have done, I don't think it's checkbox. I need to go back and look at that meeting. As a matter of fact, I'm on my other computer pulling it up so I could see. I do want to hear what was said, Because if, much like what happened in our policy committee subcommittee meeting, where situations dictated to where some comments that might not have been preferred to be stated were stated. I'm wondering if that's what happened at that public safety meeting as well. So I'm going to go on and look on there. I do believe, though, there's a lot of merit to being able to address the issues. I don't think it's been a check block thing going on, but unfortunately, we have people in other positions of leadership, elected or appointed, whose mindsets we cannot control. So I do think it's really imperative that we continue to drive that point home to hopefully be able to have a paradigm shift in their thinking. But that clearly needs to happen. And I digress a minute. I did want to thank Steve for all that he had done with the chief trying to help us get stable membership on CPAC. And it's unfortunate that in trying to be fair and equitable, each district is allowed an opportunity to have a representative, but the representative is not as committed to the task at hand. And so I certainly hope that the mayor is able to do something about it, and the city council at this point in time. Chairman Tamburino, I commend you for going back to the guidelines. You know, I'm a rules-driven person. I've always said that. But I've always tried to be tolerant and understanding, given the situations that happen in life. But I do believe some may be taking for granted the vicissitudes of life and not being serious about the commitment they accepted. And so I do support the fact of having a vote and following the guidelines as stated. And hopefully we'll be able to get more dedicated, committed individuals to this team. That's all for me right now. Thank you.
Doris?
You're welcome.
I'd only like to add that the commitment that persons appointed to CPAC would have would only be as much as the people who are appointing them are exhibiting. So if folks are just finding people and asking them to be a part that they really didn't have an interest, but maybe just being polite, it'll never work. Maybe considering changing the criteria as to how people are appointed to a council might help. Going after people who are seriously wanting to be a part and seriously wanting to make change. So that's my only comment.
One of the things before I go to Ryan.
Paul, can I mention something just on
go ahead.
Doris? Jerry actually did mention and suggest that members who have participated and graduated from the Citizens Academy might be good candidates. And I think that was part of the message that went out. It was actually, or it was mentioned in council by Jerry. And so as a result, at least one council member has reached out, and I think Jill's getting back to that council member to give him some names of graduates that are in his address zip code area. Just so I think your comments helped, at least in that one council member's.
And I provided the same recommendation to the mayor for somebody who also participated in the police academy. So there's that. Steve, I've also made clear to you, the chief, and anybody else, if the council members want to talk to me about what we need, or even if they want, I'm a big fan of them letting us vet their nominee to go over it. It's like applying for a job. If you don't set the right expectations and the person goes in blind, they're like, oh crap, I didn't know what this is going to be. Who's the best, chief, who's the best salesman to work in the Charleston Police Department? It's not you, it's that patrol officer who knows what the day-to-day job is, because there's nothing worse than hiring somebody to come in, them looking around the first day and going, oh crap, I didn't know what this was going to be. And remember, I've had that in my career, and I've created policies where you have to do a side-by-side. They're going to have a peer interview so they can get that real thing, because I want them to know what the job is, because it's not going to miraculously change when they show up. So if they want to talk to any one of us about what's expected of them, we're not going to scare them off. This isn't a scared straight. This is, hey, you really don't have to put in a lot of time. Just when you do, make it quality, right? Be involved. We have these committees. We encourage you to join. We can sell it better than any of you can sell it. The mayor's not going to sell it like we can sell it. Council members not going to sell it like we can. Take advantage of our willingness to do the job. Ryan?
Yeah, so I'm kind of on the same line as you. I think maybe that there's got to be some way to maybe hold people accountable. Is there a report we can send to the councilman saying, hey, here's the ones who attended, here's the ones who did not. Are there maybe call them out just a little bit. I know not everybody can make everything, and I fully understand that. I'm the same way, but they need to have a little bit more skin in the game if they're going to do this, and that's really what my opinion is.
Yeah, and I'll be fair and say it's education on council members. We have council members that are fairly newly elected that did not even realize they had appointed members to CPAC. And, it was kind of shocking to me that I had to explain to them, yes, you actually have an appointed member. This is what the person does. Wow, this person must have been put on the committee before I was elected. Yeah. And they've got a lot on their plates. I get that. So the more we can be used to help, I think the better. All right. I think we beat that one down pretty well.
So Mike, just a quick comment back on the question of the audit and the I guess it's related to progress being made toward the goals of the audit and community perception of that, and the community awareness of what it means in terms of public safety, is when we could have higher levels or same levels of disparity in terms of who gets stopped. Okay. But you could have increased citizen understanding, trust, if you will, and integrity. None of what has been talked about is being presented has been in that context. There's not been that balance. You can't, I'm aware of the fact, that folks say, well, we've got the 2 community centers and people seem to be responding positively about interacting with the department. But if I'm not going to that community center, or my children not engaged and involved in that, and do I have a feeling that as part of the change that the department is doing with fewer pretext stops, these community events and activities, is there an attempt to measure, or how are we attempting to measure the sense of trust, all right, and willingness to participate in problem solving? That the presentation so far that's been happening sounds like a check the box. There's X number of recommendations. We've done 98% of them. We got them in this category. So the way in which we talked about them and presented it leads to that kind of interpretation. And I know, I believe firmly that the interests of most of the law-abiding community members of all races is to feel safer as a community, and have confidence that the police department and the criminals, all right, are both being understand that is the highest level, that everybody's looking to be safe. So just some of the, even in terms of how the conversation is queued up, has been somewhat problematic, created a little bit of a problem for the department and increasingly us as CPAC, how we can talk to people.
All right, appreciate that. Let me ask you one clarifying question, Jill. So the third party, I know they're about to announce a third party. They're finalizing their rate. Is their role? So their role is to come in and just clarify for this group. Their role is to come in, look at that racial bias audit, the dashboard, and all the things on there. Yes, kind of quality control. Did you do it? Did you do it? but is their role also is oversight? Because oversight's got a different term. They're not proofreaders, right? Are they, and they're not auditing your audit. Are they going to come in and start making sure that the things are in place to start measuring the effectiveness? And so is that their role, is to really come in and, replace the internal CPD's role of, they're always going to measure themselves, but this is like, taking some of the burden and saying, okay, we've got a third party group doing the measurement now. You've put all these things in place to recommend it. How are they doing? It's not a matter of did you put the statement, into a policy, but what's the effectiveness of what that's doing? Is that what the oversight committee's has to do?
So I think that that in 3 months to do all of that would be quite difficult. I do think, though, that the role that I understand it is they're going to come in and they're going to use multiple sources. Like you said, they're going to look at documents, they're going to look at our data files, they're going to talk to people. They are going to speak with community members and you all members of CPAC. They've even expressed an interest in being involved in the survey that we're creating in conjunction with CPAC to measure community perceptions and, where we could potentially do better. I think, though, that their role is not necessarily to tell us, hey, this worked, this didn't work, but to set us up, and me specifically. And that's, I think, where my training will be useful to have a better idea of what we should, now that we have these data, are they comprehensive? Do they answer the questions that, if we use them, can they answer the questions that everyone is asking and, wants answers to? And then obviously something that I'm very interested in knowing from them is their expert outside opinion on how we internally can monitor that. So, and I think that, when we get a better look, we're starting to produce the data now. We're going to be digging into the data, into disparities to try to better understand them. And then with that knowledge, we can propose additional things that we can do differently and then plan to measure them. Because it's really, as with evaluations, if you do something really big, it's really hard to say, hey, this did this much and this did that much, because it's quite complicated to establish causality. But they're going to set the department up to be able to collect the information necessary to track this on an ongoing basis, and then, spot check and adjust and measure accurately the impacts. So I think that, yes, they're going to do some of that, but a lot of that I think is going to fall on us to be able to monitor ourselves, and obviously with your help and guidance too.
Thank you. One thing, guys, I'll say that I did also learn in watching the meeting the other day that, kind of in defense of the police department, is we want them to track a lot of metrics on, let's say like traffic stops and whatnot. And, we're always having the question, why don't you have the numbers? Why can't you tell me how many blacks versus whites versus Hispanics? And what I came to understand from that call was based on how, I guess, the state of South Carolina has a uniform ticket. So Charleston Police Department didn't have their own version of a ticket versus some other city. And that when the community wanted to start collecting that data, Charleston Police Department had to go to that uniform system and say, hey, we need these fields on our tickets that aren't available for the rest of the state. And it's not a matter of, okay, we're just going to add it for you. They had to go through not only the legality of adding it, but also these other departments don't want those fields on their tickets. So this is a custom designed ticket for Charleston Police Department. And I think that's something that just came into play. So if we're not able to go back 6, 7, 8, 9 months on some of these numbers we're looking for, that's the intelligent answer that I was able to hear, that, hey, guys, they wanted to do it. They've been trying to do this for quite a long time. They're just getting the authority now. Fawn?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I believe Lieutenant Bruder, he's captain now, right?
He's the
Yep.
captain. Yes.
Yeah, he provided that information to us and explained to us when he did a very detailed brief to us, the fact that we could not collect that separate data, but they started doing cards on their own to track the Charleston Police Department, much to their credit, started collecting cards to be able to capture that data because of the situation with it being a centralized system. So I think the intent, though, is to at some point be able to do that. So, Chairman, are you saying that now we'll be able to have that through the centralized system? Or
I
will they
think
still collect cards?
they're still going to do, I believe they're still going to do contact cards because I believe, and the chief will clarify this. I think there's still remaining demographic information, remaining things that they want to collect that other cities don't, that
Mhm.
will not be added to a number, because remember, not everything's a ticket. So the city of Charleston, well, I guess the state of South Carolina says you're either getting a ticket or a warning, and they have to be documented, right? And what the city of Charleston is saying is, no matter what we pull you over for, we're doing a contact card. So even if it's for investigative purposes, which would not result in a citation or a warning, for anything we pull you over for, we're doing a contact card so that numbers can't be hidden, right? So, well, that wasn't a motor vehicle stop. There was no ticket provided. So obviously we don't have that metric. By the city of Charleston adding that extra contact card, I think we're going to get more metrics than, and it's not going to be part of the centralized system. They will have the extra burden of that data gathering. Jill, am I portraying that right?
Yes, the field contact cards are mandatory, and we're going to continue using them for the foreseeable future because of that reason, because the data that they are collecting are so important for, to answer the questions that we're trying to understand.
And I would say from my perspective, when we talk about racial bias and presumptive stops and everything else, I'm a lay person, but to me, that's going to be the number one thing of anything that's going to call people correct, because, you hear about that, and I'll talk about TV shows, not in the real world, where, if you don't report you pulled somebody over and harassed them, how does anybody know? Right? It's like back in the day when you didn't use the body cam. How does anybody know it wasn't recorded? If they've got to do a contact card for every time they're in contact with somebody for any reason, that takes away that back room. Hey, we just harassed the guy. No, that officer's going to be reprimanded if there's no contact card. A complaint comes in and it doesn't match up to a contact card, the chief and his team are going to be all over. And I think that's, from my perspective, that's probably the biggest thing that's going to help a lot of. Yeah, Jerry.
So I think the contact cards and the additional data is one way of accountability. But another test, another way to look at it, we don't have any new data, but we've done new training, okay? And we've done different kinds of personnel evaluations. Even without the data, the old data, perhaps if any of those, that new training that we put in place or new policies that we put in place will have the effect, even with the old data sets, there should be some difference, variation. And if there's not, right, that's just another piece. But so the argument or suggestion that it's really all about what the new data can tell us, okay? It'll be a much finer analysis, more granular, and possibly being able to get closer to who did what, when, how, and where, right? But the question of whether or not the training and the community programs, right, in a general sense, right, show a difference in the dispatch or the enforcement side. The behavior of the police reflected in different training, different awareness, and the like. But we could do that analysis without the new data and the absence of us including that in the conversation, all right, and saying, hey, we can't answer those questions now because of the new data, the prior data limitations, all right, kind of falls hollow because folks say, look, the newspapers were running information about pretext stop and the disparities based on the old data, okay? You said we've made some changes. We know that. We recognize that. Not in the data collection, but in how we train people. Shouldn't there be a difference reflected in the old way we were collecting data? So again, all of that is part of what the nuanced conversations and public meetings are not getting to, but we need to get there.
Yeah, but as long as we're getting this new data and we're involved in that process, we're more, we as a group of citizens are more educated because we're involved as they're developing these. And so the key is we do have to set a benchmark, right? Once we have these things in place, we can talk about what happened 5-10 years ago. But if we don't have benchmark data to say, okay, we want to track the progress. And, you know, again, everything's not a number, you know, attitude isn't a number, you know, community perception isn't a number, but the more you can benchmark it, you know, Jerry, you and I were in the Army, what gets measured gets done, right? Bottom line, if you don't measure it, if I don't give for my officers or my employees, if I don't give them a standard that's measured, how do they know what the requirement is, right? How do they know they've met their performance goals? Because I feel good. That's, you know, when we do performance reviews, my feelings never come into play. I've got to have, no matter what they do, I want this amount of training done. I want this done. I want, you know, how many complaints do what, you know, in a police officer, it's a weird, you know, is when you're dealing people to people, it's hard, but you can still build measurable results, right? And everybody does that in every profession. You have measurable results. You know, you have your intangible feelings over here, and you throw those into review. But the more measurements we can do, but you can't have measurements without benchmarking. And we have to say, okay, let's pick a date, a time where we have our measurements that we can do and start going from there and see, is there progress? We'll never be finished. Progress is a good thing. Improvement is a good thing, right?
So Paul, I just say that the audit represents a baseline, right, against which we're being asked to assess what's the trend, right? How specific
Absolutely.
we can get, but the audit does represent the baseline. So if there was a 70% disparity in 2019 when they looked at the data, and now there is a 50%, right, at least you could say there's been a change in the trend, whether or not that's related to the change in deployment strategy, who we hired, or the training. We may not be able to make that causation, but we can say that there has been, this is what the trend is based on that baseline. The new data that we're collecting allows us to establish a new baseline and create new metrics. But 4 years later, people are looking for us to say, where are we trend-wise against the baseline that was established in the audit?
And I agree, Jerry, but I will throw this in there, and I'm going to be fair and say there will always be a moving goalpost. That audit to me was an audit of where they were in 2019. Since then, that's got to evolve. The community standards change from year to year as we progress. Those are always going to change. We can't look at it's got to be a breathing. The audit itself has to be a breathing document, right? There should be things added to it. Some things become obsolete. It should always be a work in progress to make sure we're keeping up. Yeah, it was the benchmark. It said, as of 2019, here are the recommended changes that need to be made. Well, does that stop at 2019? And the only things they identified in 2019? No, like the chief said, guys, I'm throwing my own on there. So where you had 78, there may be now 93 because he's adding his, because it's a breathing, functional document. And then the metrics that are assigned to that over time will also, you know, there are some things he may expect an immediate change. There are certain things like, I want to improve, for me, improving tardyism, right? You know, Twan, you'll like this one. For me, that's not something that I need to write your performance plan for you to fix in 6 months. No, I expect your ass to be here on time tomorrow morning. If you can't do that, you obviously don't get the message. You can't work for me. Some things are going to be immediate and some things take time. And I think the audit's just a good measure. But I think we've, you know, guys, unless anybody else has anything, I'm ready to move on. I think I know I've talked too much on it.
And I as well. But,
you know, it's the most pressing subject that CPAC has. And I know the chief respects our input, and, you know, he can scold me all he wants, but he knows. All right. So let me see. Let's move on to subcommittee reports. And lucky me, I still, for some reason, I still have communications. And Twan, I will tell you, I was almost a jerk and reached out to you to make you take it over, but that would be being a terrible leader. And so I am hell-bent. I'm going to find, once we staff this up, I will have a new subcommittee chair. You deserve a break. So, and besides that, you haven't called me volunteer, so I'm not going to bug you about that. All right. So communications. the communications subcommittee held a session a week ago, a good public session, and this was on motor vehicle stops, and it was led by Captain Bruder, who did a great job. Emily was our moderator. I appreciate, Jerry and Doris being moderators on there. I appreciate the chief coming on there and giving some, obviously very relevant and topical words. So I think that went well. Our participation for that meeting was probably the highest we've had. We had quite a few people. The questions were good. They were, pretty good. And I think these sessions, I will say, they get good media attention, which helps a lot of people on the city council and whatnot kind of realize that, we are here and, people are noticing what we're doing. So we got very good. The only thing I missed saying on that meeting, Chief, and I apologize, I should have said it, or you guys could have said it, is I should have highlighted, hey, speaking of motor vehicles, by the way, don't park on King Street or you're going to get towed. There are only 25 people on there, and you guys have been beating that. I should have said it. But I think that went well. We're going to finalize, once I get a new subcommittee chair, we're going to finalize the topic for the next meeting. I think these meetings are very good. And I really, as the chair of the subcommittee, I can't thank the police department enough, because this is one of those where they do 100% of the work. Emily and I just dip in, give our comments and say, hey, thanks for including us. The police department team put that together. Jason did a great job. I mean, he's obviously very passionate about it. I can see he really loved his time doing that. So he did a great job, and his personality, he's like Tony. Their personalities, and Dustin, their personalities are made for these types of sessions. So I appreciate that. Fun.
Thanks, Chairman. That was a really good webinar. Really good webinar. I've pushed it out to some of the young people in the community, like at my church and other organizations. My sorority chapter has what we call a youth leadership program with young ladies who are seniors in high school. And so I shared it with them and asked them to set up a session where the young ladies can watch it. Maybe they can click on it together in a Zoom meeting. But that was really a good one. That was really a good one. So kudos for getting that one done. It really was great.
All the police department, and I will say that, our former friend, still our friend, but former council member, Hack, would have been happy to know that we did include a few tips on how to behave when you're pulled over. So we did throw those in there. Wasn't the highlight of the call, but we did include what would make the play. And what I like is, and I'll say it among us, what I liked is how Jason handled that topic. He kept stressing it makes you and me safe. It wasn't about compliance. It wasn't about, because when I get there, I'm in charge. No, it was about for my safety and your safety. And the more we stress that, I agree with him. I love the way he presented that. And, I would say that matches up with what I saw at the Citizen Police Academy on how they handle traffic stops. Now, granted, I've not been pulled over in the city of Charleston. I don't know if that's how they do it, but I know that's how they train it. So I really like seeing that. And I'm not planning on getting pulled over to see if they really do that in person. I can't afford it. Any questions for me as the communications subcommittee? All right.
Yeah, Paul?
Yes, sir.
Do we have the data on how many attendees have been at the 3 or 4 of these sessions that we had? I'm sure that when the assessment team begins to do their work, that's going to be a metric that they're going to have. Do we have the numbers from the prior sessions?
I know how many people attended, and I can check and see if we have the registrations. We had, by my count, which people were kind of coming in and out, we had 24 attendees from the public, and we had about 45 people register. And I'm
talking about the prior.
I can't speak
the prior section. So just in terms of how successful we've been, because that's one of the data points that might be captured in the assessment.
Yeah, Jill, check with Christy to see if she exported, because at the end of a session, you should have that data available from your prior sessions to, there's all kinds of metrics you can pull from there. I would pull registrants, right? Because like you said, at any given moment, people dip in and dip out. Some people are there for 5 minutes, some people are there for the whole thing. I think the benchmark, we have to be uniform, how many registered to attend, because that means that's how many people were at least impacted enough by the agenda to be interested in attending.
But then you can also count the views though, because
Yeah.
like for me, I had a conflict at the last minute and wasn't able to be on. I registered, but I wasn't able to be on to the actual session. But I went back and I viewed it afterwards because I asked Jill and she sent me the link. So I think the views matter too.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then
Thanks,
when-
Tricia. I
yeah.
never hadn't thought about that. That is huge.
Yeah, we have a couple hundred at least on the last one, maybe more now.
Well, Jason's popular. He's gonna have his own. You better check his Instagram.
Congratulations.
Yeah. No, I mean, the more excited they are about the topic, that's the key. Is always finding the right person to present. And I've got to say, so far, and I'm not trying to kiss y'all's behinds, the police department, but the truth is, y'all have been magical at finding the right person to lead these sessions because, and sometimes these subjects are boring. We try to, and I'll give the CPAC the credit. We go through those and we will say, guys, that presentation is going to kill it. I'm not going to sit through it, and I'm the chair. Let's spruce it up. But they've done a great job. Jason did set the bar a little bit higher than we thought it would be. It was great. All right. Ms. Doris, our new chair of policies and procedures, and for now, motor vehicle stops.
Well, motor vehicle stop is new to me, but anyway.
Jerry held out on it.
I'll proceed with policies and procedure. In 2022, the subcommittee was invited to review and offer comments on 5 general orders. And at our January 19th subcommittee meeting, Captain Crutella advised the members that the current procedure that the committee is following for reviewing general orders are not effective and that in helping the department accomplish its review goals. And that was verbally presented to the subcommittee, that there would be a change in the process. As it was presented, this proposed change would affect the committee's role in reviewing General Order 29, which the subcommittee had just submitted comments to, and it would also affect future reviews of their general orders. The next general order for review will be General Order 40, Juvenile Directives. Any questions regarding general order updates?
Doris, do you guys did they give you a timeline on when you'll get that next general order for review?
No, Captain, I think what we're waiting for is for the committee, and I'll go through that in the next part, which is the subcommittee roles and responsibilities.
Okay, Jill.
I can speak to that. I asked Captain Cortella and he said that he would be planning to send out the policies on youth, right, the youth policy directives on youth next week.
Yeah, I know he did send out 29 for us to re-review, but we have not done anything regarding that because I think we need some clarity regarding the changes. So I'll speak to that now. The proposed change that the CPD staff mentioned did present some concerns, and that was heavily addressed in our last policy meeting. And as a result of that, the CPAC chair and vice chair was asked to have a conversation with Chief Reynolds to discuss the concerns the subcommittee had with the proposed review process change. Sometime after that meeting, I think it was last week, I asked you, Joe, to provide those guidelines in writing, the proposed guidelines in writing, and not leave it for the policy committee to interpret. I didn't think it was fair for us to use our own interpretation of what you meant for us to do. And you did provide very detailed explanation with a flow chart, which will be very, very helpful. And I think that would help guide us in the review process. So until we can speak about that and flesh out any questions we might have regarding that, I think that will dictate how we move forward in reviewing future general orders. And that will be discussed in our next meeting. Since we have not met and had an opportunity to discuss the detailed explanation or interpretation that you reviewed, we can't move forward on that. So at our next meeting, that will be an agenda item for us to work through the interpretation you provided.
Doris, if you don't mind, can I recommend that if Jill or Tony can get to you their anticipated date of sending you the newest policy, from that I would backdate, and say, okay, if I'm anticipating getting it in 2 weeks, maybe have an ad hoc meeting with the policy subcommittee to go ahead and review your policies and procedures so that you're aligned, so that we don't delay. We don't want to miss out on, if they're sending that new policy, we haven't met yet. You all haven't met yet. You can't review it because you don't have your rules aligned with what you want to do. I would rather get those done in advance of him sending the next one.
Okay. Well, if you all can get that done and sent to us, Jill, I'd appreciate it.
Just so I'm clear, so you, all right, so I can forward you the flow chart with the explanation to everybody for their review. Is that what you like done immediately at this point?
You can send out the what you sent to me. If you can send that out to everyone, just not the policy committee, but the whole CPAC.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. We can do that. And if I may, I also just wanted to note that I did put up a doodle poll. Hopefully everybody received an email from me with getting everybody's availability for the next subcommittee, the policy subcommittee meeting. So just wanted to let everybody know and if you didn't receive it, let me know.
Yeah, I got that. I think I responded to that, and I think I saw that a couple other folks had.
Okay, great.
So procedurally, let's talk about the juvenile piece. Is now our procedure going to be, when we receive it, it goes to the policy subcommittee, and the policy subcommittee is responsible for sending communication, those comments back to the department within the 14 days or whatever?
I think that's what we need to flesh out. We haven't met since we got it in writing. So I think we need to have a conversation and make sure that the subcommittee fully understand the expectation of, reviewing the general orders and other policies and procedures. So until we can sit down as a committee, I think, and have CPD staff speak with us regarding what their expectation is and how we play into their expectation, I think we can move forward better instead of, I just got it last week. I just read over it. I don't know if you have a copy of it, and I'm not sure if you're still on the policy committee, but anyway, the other members have not seen that. So until they see it and we work through a process and come to an agreement, I think that's the best way to move forward with that.
Jerry, I would recommend that because you were on the same call with me and Jill and the chief and Tony, you heard the conversation flow, so you understand. We came to somewhat of an understanding of how this goes. I think if you can work closely with Doris and go back and forth, because Jill, I imagine what you're sending in the business process flow has already been given the seal of approval over. That's the recommended intent from the chief, right?
That was our understanding of what we discussed in the meeting. Yes.
Yeah, Doris, I'll say, from the meeting that Jerry and I had, we, the big gist of it, and I'll say this for all the CPAC members, the big gist of it was to make sure that we weren't seeing at one time a policy that was an old policy, none of the recommended changes. Here's old policy. That's all we can show you. What the chief agreed to, so we had no pushback whatsoever, is I believe our intent is to receive a copy of the policy with the edit commentary. They've made their pass-throughs, they've looked at it, they've engaged others. Here are the recommended verbiage changes in a document. Like we've all seen a Word document or anything else that shows this is lined out, this is added in, this is moved around. That's the kind of working version to be provided to the subcommittee. You all would then in turn have 14 days, or, you know, and you can work it out with them, whether it's they give you longer for whatever reason, but we want to keep it close to 14 days to go through that, look at their recommended changes. And so you're giving opinions on what they've already played with. It's not final yet. Yeah, and I think that was the other semantics we were having a hard time with. You can only see it when it's final, and then you're not asking for our input, you're just asking us to nod our heads. And the chief didn't do that, so that's not on him. Jerry, am I right in saying that's, I think, what we communicated we'd like to do?
Yeah, that's pretty much
so,
where we arrived at, and it's very similar to the language that we originally recommended like 6 or 9 months ago, where when the review begins, all right, when our opportunity to comment begins. So I think we're pretty much in alignment. The question that we did raise, and correctly so, Doris raises, is whether or not our recommendations have to come back to the full body before they go to the department. And I would suggest that the subcommittee be empowered to be responsible for pulling together those comments and getting those comments back to the department within the 14 days or whatever time it is, not for us to have to wait until the next cycle of council meetings to get those comments approved.
Yeah, for the rest of the CPAC members that may not have been included, we were hoping to have a motion from the subcommittee come to the table today, but we don't have a quorum, we can't vote on it. In a similar fashion that we did about a year ago, where CPAC, the general CPAC, empowered the communications subcommittee to determine what the public events would be without having to keep coming back, you know, to the full committee to get approval, and then you wait another 3 months. We're looking to possibly do, I know, you know, there was a motion been positioned to empower the policy subcommittee to meet, to review the edits of, review all the proposed policy changes, gather their commentary as they see fit, consolidate that commentary from the subcommittee. And because they're the subcommittee that looks at policy, they've invited everybody to be a part of it. They're empowered to turn around and then send that back to the police department with their comments and recommendations, right? And they don't need to bring it back to the full CPAC, because that defies the logic of the turnaround time the police department needs for us to be able to give a review. And so that was going to be made today. We have to hold that off, but that's the intent, Doris, is that hopefully if the CPAC meets, we can approve giving your policy subcommittee that authority to consolidate the commentary, and you have that direct communication back to the police department with your comments and whatnot. Now, what will happen after that point, when that's returned, the command staff, anybody else who needs to, they're going to take our comments in line. They're going to take comments. We're not the only ones that are going to look at it, right? In some cases, the council may look at it. They may have other subject matter experts, even after the fact, look at it. They'll take all that feedback together and come up with, okay, we've done what we're going to do. This is going to be probably what we're going to be lining out to our officers. They'll provide us a copy of the final and say, hey, this is what we took everybody's input. It may reflect our changes, it may not, but they will be taken under consideration. So we will not just see the final product. We will have our input before that fact.
Right. Well, I know we've commented on at least 5 last year. We've not seen any of the final products. So it would be helpful if they can pass those along to us, because we haven't been getting any of the ones we reviewed back. We haven't seen those.
For audit purposes, Jill, I think the big thing to do there, you're going to need, not just for the audit purpose, but for just for business practices, is develop, when you take your business process flow, once it's approved, develop it into almost like an Excel spreadsheet so that you can put geo this. Here's the date of send out, and you have your other parties involved, right? And you can record the date that we saw it. You can also record the date we got the final so that you can see if there's any gaps in there, right? And you'll see, well, it wasn't sent to CPAC yet. And that's your measurement of how it was done. It will help you when you go through your oversight as well.
Mhm. Yes, and I can certainly suggest that to Captain Curtella. I know that he has a way of keeping track of what.
And
when,
what I would do is go back, if you would, have them go back to the policies they've already reviewed. Okay. And maybe if he's got the dates, fill that in for the prior policies. And I would just circle back with the Doris, and make sure they've got, if there's old policies they never got, well, let's fix it. Just send them a copy of it, right? So they have that final copy on record. I know it's public. I know it's on a website, but I'm not going to ask people that are devoted to this to have to go to a website on their own to find it when, they're part of the process. You wouldn't tell a city council member to go to the website and look it up. You're going to provide it. So I think that will just set us all current as of today, if we can do that.
Yes, and I do believe that Captain Curtella is certainly willing to discuss what changes came through. Yeah, at the next policy, like what changes were made at the upcoming policies.
He's awesome to work with. And, we had a little hiccup at the last policy subcommittee meeting. I'll be fair and say, and I'll be very transparent and say that I spoke to him afterwards, not as a boss, not as just guy to guy, person to person. Hey, let's talk about what happened in the meeting. It's everybody's learning. I learned from every one of these meetings, and intent's great, but sometimes your intent doesn't convey. Perception is people's reality. So we had that honest conversation, and I what I love about the guy is he took it to heart. He felt bad, offered his sincerest apologies. I said it's not a matter of apologies. It's just we're all part of a team, and sometimes we all will stub our toe communication wise. I do it all the time, and so I just want to say that he was good about it. We didn't need to escalate it above that. Any other questions?
I'd also like to add, Council Fieldings, I think she said earlier in the meeting that, words matter and how you present in conversation matters. And it was a little disheartening hearing a comment that was made. Because as I said, we were invited to review, the policy committee was invited in 2022 to review 5 policies, and we provided comments to those policies. And moving forward, now that we have some written guidelines, and I think having information in writing is always crucial, and not interpreting information from a verbal perspective, because misunderstanding occurs when we're left to interpret what we're hearing among ourselves. We might not be hearing what the original intent is. So moving forward, I hope that we can have, when we have these discussion changes in policies or processes, to present it to us in writing first and then have a discussion.
And I want to make clear that's why I reached out to him. I didn't want it just to be left at the meeting ended. I did want to reach out because it was a teachable moment, because to be honest, he didn't realize what he said that upset everybody. And I had to explain it to him and point it out. And then once we talked through it, he completely understood. And you could hear, I'm a behavioralist, you could hear in his voice where he was horrified that it was never his intent, but he realizes how he said it. There was no other way to, it was hard for everybody to perceive it, right? And guys, it's not a big mystery, okay? It was simply in the course of our dialogue, as buttons are being pushed and answers being asked for, a comment was made. I didn't have, what if I hadn't shown you, you wouldn't have known? And that goes back to the whole theory of that's the whole point of why we exist, is because, if I didn't say it, it didn't happen. If I hid it, well, we're not working in the shadows. That wasn't, and I believe the man, right? But I did make it a point of reaching out afterwards to help him understand that, different audiences are going to perceive things a different way. And we need to always be aware of that. And we would have been not doing him a service, or the chief a service, or the Charleston Police Department a service, if we didn't turn around and then be part of the solution by helping him understand, right? And I think we did. So I don't want to beat that too, but I was very aware of it, right? None of you asked me to reach out to him. I did it on my own because I knew. Jerry.
Just quickly on related to this, what is the current status of GO 29, the constitutional issues?
Sure. So GO 29, we did not receive any feedback by the deadline of February 10th. And so that has gone into the approval stage for training purposes. However, if the CPAC does wish to provide commentary on that policy, the CPD will accept it. It's a policy that will likely continue to evolve as we seek other outside subject matter expertise. So at this time, it was really important for the department to move forward on those issues and train on the changes that were currently in place, but we will certainly accept feedback if you would like to offer it at a later date.
And to correct you, Jill, we were provided that policy earlier. We found out in our last meeting that it was an old policy that we had reviewed. So it wasn't that we didn't offer any comments. We didn't offer comments to the policy that they were actually working on. We did offer comment to the policy that was provided to us. So
yes, ma'am. Yes, you're correct. Earlier, we did receive earlier comments at an earlier date on that policy.
And just for the record, I don't recall having received the revised 29, but it might be on me. But
I think that might be on you, because I believe we did get the revised.
I did see a copy of it.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry, because I know you were on the copy list, so I'll find it and make sure you got it. All right.
And just like the others, Jill, let's make sure everybody gets what we have, whatever's the current, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's the moving forward. That's what we hope to do, is provide, the current policy and the marked up version for their review, and during the review period.
Right. And again, I think that the interpretation that you provided, Joe, is going to be really helpful. So thank you again for that. And
you're welcome. I hope so.
That ends my report.
Right, guys. And we're memorializing it not just for us, but remember, we're all going to leave these assignments, and people are going to follow up along this. And rather than every time somebody new comes in recreating the wheel, when they come in, we can give them these set of documents to say, hey guys, you're on the policy subcommittee, here's what we do, and we have our own CPAC policies and procedures that we're developing as we go along. And I think, Jill, that's going to be one of the first really great ones that we have, which is good that it's going to the policy and procedure department, committee, because that's what they do. All right. Okay. So Jerry and I met with Cajun, and the date was January 23rd. So we met with them on a Monday night at their request. And what they wanted to do is they want to, we met with, there was three participants there, representatives from Cajun. And they wanted to express some of our concerns. I think, you heard Suzanne, who was our community speaker, and she's a representative from them. And it was both an informational session for us on some of their efforts. Jerry knows them much better than I do. They had some questions for us. They wanted to know what progress CPAC was making, what's been our impact, what's our role, what's our mission, where we come into play, because like a lot of people in the community, they may hear us reference, but they don't necessarily know what we do, and they don't know what our impact has been. And so we gave them some insight into what we've been doing, different ways they can be involved in our process. We do public sessions. We did answer questions. We're very, very transparent. They asked us what we explained that we're we're spinning our wheels in some things through no fault of the police department, because it's not their fault, but my lack of participation. And that our number one need, they said, well, if we're gonna go bug the mayor and the city council, what's your number one need is CPAC. How can we beat the drum for you? And I don't hide it. If I don't have members, we don't exist. And that's the biggest thing, is we feel that the city is not giving us the respect or attention or focus that we are due, that we were mandated for. And if they just consider us a checkbox, we should just go away, right? And by not giving us members, and we can't hold business meetings, then there's no focus. We were very clear. The police department shows up in droves. Their leadership is fully committed to what we're doing. They're actively participating. It's sad that they've got more participants than we do, but they're always there. We're falling short of our obligations because our participants don't show up. So what I was clear is my number one need is go to your city council members, go to the mayor, go to whoever you can, and make sure that CPAC is not propped up, but built up. And that's the way they could help us. Some of their concerns that they expressed to me were a lot of what Suzanne said. Is we had this audit 4 years ago, and I'm not going to rehash. I think I addressed most of this in the early on, but I want to say that this is their recurring message. They do talk to the mayor. They talk to council members. I know they've worked with the chief quite a bit. I know they've worked with Deputy Chief Walker. I know they've talked to Captain Cretella quite a bit. So they're actively engaged. The frustration that they had that was expressed to us is they're not seeing the racial bias side of things. So we did touch on that. So I'm not going to really rehash that. Suzanne did reach out to me to ask me, hey, I get 2 minutes, right? And they do. The public gets 2 minutes. But if they ever want to send me their comments and concerns, I can certainly place them on the agenda. And it's something that we can talk about amongst ourselves, which I've done tonight. I've already included that in our commentary and our discussion. The questions that she sent to me, I think we've addressed a lot of those. I've already reached out to Jill. I've sent her a copy of their information. I want those included in the minutes for our meeting today, so that they do reflect that we did receive these concerns and they are part of CPAC's work. And we are, I think we're all aligned as a community. I don't think we're aligned as activist groups or anything else. We're aligned as a community, and the police department is part of the community. So when I say we're aligned, we're all aligned. We want to see better results, right? We all do. And so I think their commentary is in line with what we're trying to accomplish and what everybody else is trying to accomplish. So those are going to be part of the minutes. We've addressed them. Any questions on Jerry? Is there anything I missed about that meeting?
I think you did a fair summary.
Right. It was a very good meeting. I mean, we want to work with everybody who's helping to improve the community. We don't see eye to eye on every topic in this group right now. We're not going to see eye to eye with externally. That's why it takes a team. And if we all agreed with each other, we wouldn't exist. Right. It's bouncing these different diverging thoughts and coming to a consensus agreement. Okay, Chief, I know you had to suffer through our blather so you can get to yours. I know you want to speak to a few things, so appreciate your time.
No, this is important. Grateful for everybody. Doris, I wasn't there at the last meeting where there was a lot of discussion, but I appreciate your patience and kind of going back and forth with Jill and making sure that we document this and that we get this right. And to hear that you haven't seen the final policies is troubling. So we'll make sure we correct all those things. And I'm just grateful that you all are actively participating and that you care and that you're trying to get it right. So thank you. With my summary, I'm just going to hit on a handful of things. Some we've already covered. This is kind of the beginning of our special event season. We're gearing up for the bridge run. Seawee obviously starting tonight. Actually, it started and through the weekend. Ambassador Haley came last weekend, and Governor Haley announced her presidency last week or earlier this week. And there's going to be a lot more of that. There's going to be a lot more in our city. So we're preparing for a lot of those things and working with our partners and parades. And there's different parades in March and just a lot of things going on in our city. Memphis, I hit on that in a variety of different venues, but I'll just kind of talk about it a little bit now because I think it's important for our major CPAC meeting to hit on that. So before even the video was released, I'd heard enough. I've been in contact with some of my colleagues around the country, been on some conference calls, and learned enough for me to make comment. I said, initially I said, not only would we not condone that, but we condemn that type of behavior. And I had a lot stronger language after I saw the video. I'm a part of a national organization that has members of the larger city chiefs and sheriffs, and actually made a statement that I think I sent out to CPAC, very specifically condemning the murder of Tyree Nichols and just the actions of those officers. And there's more officers that are being caught up in that. And it was just horrific. It's not consistent with our training, with how we treat people, with how we make arrests, with how we make stops. I mean, the whole thing was just horrific, and it ended in his murder. And I think it's important to talk about that. It's important that we continue to talk about race, because race is a part of all of these things that are happening. So we're not trying to avoid that. We just want to put a frame around it that is a frame that is in context and where we can do something with it. Last week, you already hit on this, but I thought the CPAC discussion on traffic stops was very well done. And I think from Jill, I think you all mentioned this, but it's gotten a lot of watches. Like I think Twan, forwarding that to your sorority and, just different people, that's really helpful. And we need to do more of that, I think. I met with the Jewish community, Emmanuel, the congregation last night. There was a presenter, the CEO of ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, presented for about an hour or so and talked about extremism and hate. And it was a fascinating conversation. And I think they really appreciated that I was there with Jason Bruder. Captain Bruder was there with me. Let's see. Very disappointed, and I don't want to get us off track too much, but I'm very disappointed, and it does not sound to me like the hate crime bill is going to pass. There's a lot of people that are standing in front of that passing, and I've been very public in my support for that. I think we need a hate crime bill in the state of South Carolina. I think it's ridiculous that we don't have one already. And so I'm a big advocate. We have a version of an ordinance here in the city of Charleston that we passed, I think in 19. And I see on the front page of the paper earlier this week, a big article about the legislature making some new bill about pinball machines and kids being able to operate pinball machines. And I see next to that a tiny little article on constitutional carry, which is not a good bill for our city, not a good bill for the police. It's not a good bill, in my opinion, for the state. I've been very adamantly opposed to that. And it's passed, I think, the House, and I'm hopeful that it doesn't go much further than that. But and I'm a pro Second Amendment person. I've had weapons most of my life, probably always will. But I got to tell you, I'm for responsible gun ownership. And to see people walking up and down King Street with guns on their hips and us not being able to do anything about it, just there's some really basic things in the existing law that requires training and registering. And there's just some basic things that I think make sense. And essentially constitutional carry takes all that away. And there's anybody can carry anywhere, anytime. And they're legally entitled to that. And we're really not able to stop them. It makes it very difficult for the police, in my opinion. And I've said that publicly. We hit on the racial disparities. I've heard that loud and clear. Whatever we have now, we need to put it out there and have a real good frame around it, and we will. And I've asked Jill, like I said earlier, and Jason to kind of help us, maybe with Dr. Albert, to just have a real good, to me, a beginning conversation. It's just a beginning, as I think Jerry said earlier, was establishing some baselines from which we can make change and continue to improve and do better and have better outcomes. There's a lot of things in the pipeline. Jerry mentioned some of the areas where we have a presence, where maybe there's some positive things going on, but we need more community engagement. There's no question about that. So we got to continue to work on that. We have a lot of activities, a lot of events, but are they working? And that's part of what the audit said is, are you measuring what you're doing? And Jill's been in a lot of the meetings recently. Is it evidence-based? Is it worth our time and resources? Is it yielding the right outcomes? Are we helping substantially, or are we just doing activities that really don't have a significant or lasting impact? So there's a lot of work we're doing, but now we're doing more to drill down and assess and measure and see what we're accomplishing and how we could get a greater level of engagement. I think I've mentioned previously, maybe end of year, but our homicides and some of the main numbers of violent crime are down. But I got to tell you, our shootings are up. Even though our homicides were very low this past year, and we're a very safe city, we still have way too many shootings. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to continue to work on our violent crime. And the last thing I'll say is we had an annual banquet, our second annual banquet. The first year, last year, we had about 150 people there. And I actually snuck out of the hospital to go there and snuck back in after I attended the banquet. This year, I was grateful to be there, and we had over 400 people there. And it was very positive, very uplifting, very encouraging, I think, for our officers and a lot of the non-sworn people in our department, people that probably would never be able to go to something like that, were able to come and bring their spouses or their significant others, their partners, and just, different family members to celebrate some of the life-saving efforts and a variety of different things. And so I'll end there. I am so grateful for you continuing. I think I like what Paul said about building up, not just propping up CPAC, but building it up. I like that term. And we need to continue this work. It's extremely important. And we're listening and we are participating. I think somebody mentioned that a minute ago. We are engaged. We want to get this right. We know that we can do better. We know that there's areas that we need to be focused more on. And I'm so grateful for everybody on this call. I look at you all, and this is a big commitment from you. And I couldn't say thank you enough.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody have any questions or comments for the Chief? I will point out we have a Citizens Police Academy coming up, and this is the wrong audience because I know almost all of you were in the same class I was in. I love telling everybody as I go around about my partner, Jerry, Quick Draw Jerry. Great experience. I've heard even from the time we did it, the feedback that they got from our class has really, it's just when you hear about work in progress and never stopping building, the feedback I've heard from the last session was, wow, you guys should have gone to that one because it's really, and they're telling me it's even going to be better this time. So I know all of you have attended. Reach out to people that you work with, right? That you work with in the community, and let's keep beating the drum because the truth is, this is where we're going to start recruiting our CPAC members from. Somebody who's willing to go 8 Wednesdays in a row to the different police department offices obviously is invested in this topic, right? And those are the people that we want involved with this. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be a bobblehead saying the police are great and they're doing everything perfect, because none of you are bobbleheads. You all, I think the best people to go to a police academy type event for citizens are the critics, not the fans. The fans get nothing out of it other than excitement. It's the critics who get the most out of that process. So as you're dealing with people in the public who may, be challenging and talking about this as a hard subject, they're right. but the more we understand each other, the more we can accomplish together. So reach out to your public, groups. I know the invitation's out there. I think it's probably the hottest ticket in town lately. It probably are starting to get waiting lists, which is good. Any other questions or comments on that? Well, Chief, I always appreciate your commentary, and more than your commentary, your sincerity, right? I was listening. I don't normally like to listen to city council meetings. They bore me. I elect somebody to sit in on those, and that's my councilman. That's his job. But I did listen, and Councilmember Gregory, I believe it was, or it may have been Waring, made an amazing point about just the sincerity and how he felt. I think it was Waring who made it a point of saying, guys, if you had been here 15, 20 years ago, you would never question the progress we made as a city. If you knew what policing was then, if you knew what the climate was and our department was then, or even 6, 7 years ago. And this was his commentary. And, I believe that. I'm not a lifelong member of Charleston. I was here for 4 years as a student and left and then came back. So Chief, that didn't happen in a vacuum, right? That didn't happen without leadership. People are going to, what gets measured gets done. And obviously the measurements are getting stronger and stronger because we're not perfect. This isn't kumbaya, but I think we're getting there. And I think the desire to get there more than anything is there. And so I do appreciate your continued involvement with us. Okay, next up is our big talker, Captain McFadden.
Good evening. Let me put my screen up for you. For my one slide. All right. Hope everybody's well. I'm just going to summarize the past month and a half for you for our outreach unit specifically. So we had a couple presentations, bike safety presentation for the Boy Scouts, and then we also did traffic safety tips at the Waring Center. We developed a new partnership with Hope to Home this year, where we actually assist them and help restore the furniture. And then we also help locate families in need to donate that furniture and also assist with transporting the furniture as well. We also have a new partnership with Cuisine Rescue. They donate food for us to disperse throughout the community and also use within our community centers. So we've used their donation so far to cook for Bridgeview community and also feed the youth while they've been doing some homework after school in our centers. We traveled to Columbia in partnership with SLED and the SC Forestry Commission for our medication take back program drop off. That is quarterly. We also held our first Coffee with a Cop engagement this year at Starbucks on Savannah Highway, which Paul dropped by. So thank you, sir, for that. And then we had some school shadowing going on, and we had a middle school class tour our department and our facilities, and they met chief and a lot of our executive command, a lot of our officers. And then we were able to engage with them and provide lunch for them as well. Some of our still active programs, our pharmacy program, that is a weekly program where we partner with Low Country Food Bank and Charleston Mental Health. Our officers pack and pick up the food and donations, and then we transport and distribute throughout various locations. We do get a lot of people in the community in Mall Park and our East Side community, Joseph Floyd Manor, Gadsden Green, and Ashley Oaks. And like Chief, I also have a puppy running around. So if you hear that in the background, that is him. We're also still actively engaged with Serve and Connect and Greg's Groceries, distributing food boxes. So Sergeant Staggers is our ambassador with Serve and Connect, which I did talk about the history of that in a previous meeting, but he did travel to Columbia recently, earlier this month. And he did speak about our outreach efforts in Charleston and our efforts to build partnerships within the community, and also spoke about the assistance that we've received from Serve and Connect. That organization did help donate to our East Side event for National Night Out last August. So they've been a really good partner with our police department. We're continuing with our Alice training with our businesses, and we did an information video with Officer Millette, who does that training. And we advertised that, and we got a lot of views, a lot of business inquiries. So he's done a couple Alice trainings in the past month. And then we also, he's been completing physical site assessments at the request of some of our businesses as well. Obviously, we still open our community centers twice a week by our officers and also whenever else requested by the community. So we've started a lot of planning for upcoming outreach, such as bringing Trident Tech into the community to highlight their offering of tuition-free classes, some job searching, resume writing. So the schools are still utilizing our centers and recently used it to help parents fill out school choice applications. In addition, specifically the Gathering Center in Gadsden Green, whenever we have calls for service that might be volatile or a tense situation, one specifically last Friday evening, we are able to kind of deconflict, but we use the center and we'll walk over the persons involved to kind of talk out the situation, if just to deconflict what's going on and move them away from maybe anyone else that would have been involved or not involved or watching while standing outside. So we do use those centers for not only for our youth activities and our adult services, but also to just deconflict some situations going on when we respond to those calls for service. Officer Hamilton and now Lieutenant Ingalls began a youth basketball season. They named the team, it's a youth team named CPD Blue Knights, and they are finishing up their season soon over in West Ashley. And then the end of last year, we began a youth mentorship program on Mondays at C.E. Williams North. So the SRO reached out to us specifically to start kind of a midday youth program in which we typically start with some discussion and then also sports engagement. So that's continuing this year as well. In terms of our non-fatal overdose outreach, which I think that might have been a topic for your next webinar, Paul. Mm-hmm. So Shelby's been doing really well. And kind of her major update is we did make a very large order of Narcan and supplies for our harm reduction kits. I think we had packed, well, West Ashley seniors actually assisted us with packing the kits, and it was probably close to 600. So they're also going to assist us with some small promotional videos for advertising our kits. And she already began giving out kits. We were just waiting on the Narcan to come in, which in the past couple of weeks it has. So we're going to begin advertising that and getting those out to the community as well. And just some final upcoming events. We have the Polar Plunge this Saturday, the 18th. Obviously, all proceeds benefit the Special Olympics. So we have about 5 officers taking the plunge. SeaWe starts Friday through Sunday. Last year, we had a good Harbor Patrol and outreach setup. I think this year they sold out all their spots. So I think Harbor's going to sneak in there. I don't know if we can, but Harbor Patrol will have the airboat over there in Riddlebank Park if any of you stop in to say hello. Super Saturday, Hope Center will be assisting them with that on February 25th. They do have a flyer, so I'll share that with you all whenever I get everything squared away with that. So Ashleyville, Maryville, they used to have a block party, and I think they have not held it since prior to COVID, but they're going to start holding that. So we've started some community meetings and planning with them, and that'll be at Deming Playground, and that date is to be determined. And then we are planning a mentorship program for Orleans Gardens, Gadsden Green, and Mills. That planning's in progress. Police Citizens Academy, which you spoke about, and yes, I'm making another change this spring, but that begins in April, and that'll be 8 weeks. And the partnership project actually in planning for Island Estates. We're going to assist them with the community cleanup, outreach, and plan to do some roundtable discussion and then finalize with a community event over there. At Camp Hope, we've begun planning. That's a huge undertaking, but that will start in June. And then Jill mentioned earlier, but the community survey, the third-party assessor for the audit has better software than us. So we've been in talks with them, and I'm sure we're going to communicate with them regarding that survey and you guys as well before we finalize it, and then use their better software to issue and capture the results we need. And that's all I have for you.
Christy, you just need to admit you're busier now than when you were over traffic, right?
I love being busy. So.
Yeah, but that's an amazing schedule. Great job. Any comments or questions for Christy? Captain McFadden.
Chris, yeah, just while I'm thinking about it, I think it was Mr. and Mrs. Smalls who have since passed, were huge leaders in Ashleyville and getting that annual outdoor party going. We should do something to honor them and their family.
Yeah, and I think that from the neighborhood meeting, they haven't done that block party since they passed. And so
No, they haven't.
that's
Yep.
why they've started planning, and they're going to move it to Deming Playground, I believe. But yeah, that's a good idea, Chief.
It'd be nice to honor them. They're so active, amazing people.
And guys, as you get these invitations, even if you can just pick one silly event, like, driving over there where they're giving away coffee or something, just not just for the public view of you. I think the police department leadership and the officers that see you and see you're vested in them, I think they get a lot of it just as much as the public does. It's showing that we're taking our time to support them as well. Great initiatives. One thing I'm going to point out, I forgot to say, is in the discussion with the chief, and we were talking about getting members for CPAC and everything else. I did make the request that on one of the evenings of the police academy, that a representative from CPAC be invited to give a short commercial for not only what CPAC does, but to talk to them about getting involved in CPAC if there's any interest. But it's a great way to let public know who we are, what we do, and what our relationship is with the police department. And for the record, the chief didn't even think about it. He turned and looked at Jill and said, "Why are we thinking about this? Let's just do it." So we'll have our spot in the police academy to give an overview of who we are and what we do. And I think that's big. So thank you, Chief.
Can I just say one other
Yes,
other thing to add to Christy? She's just really given us the highlights, but we just met yesterday with a group of people. There's a gentleman, his name's Cyrus. He was a stunt double for the Black Panther in the movie, the Marvel movie, and he's an amazing guy. And he's got like 4 degrees and a couple advanced degrees, and he grew up in Orleans Gardens, and his real passion is to give back. So he's approached us. He has kind of a curriculum for mentoring, and he calls it Roses in Concrete, meaning that beautiful things can come out of a hard place. So a lot of neat things. Just one more thing that Christy and her team, Tawnette was there, and just I think some good things will come out of that. I'm excited about. And Christy also has some things they were already doing in Orleans Gardens, so it fits nicely. And so that's another great opportunity to try to help some of the young folks.
Well, Christy, I'm going to do, I know you know that I connected Deputy Chief Walker with the new Citadel basketball coach to get them involved in the basketball stuff. What I'll do next is, and Christy, I'll probably do this with you, and then you can connect them to who you want. For those of you that don't know, the Citadel just named the first Black head coach in the history of the Citadel and the history of the Southern Conference. He's a 1996 graduate. What's that? Go Bulldogs.
Football.
Well, we're the only team in town that has a football team. So what I'm going to do is, Chris, I think connecting you with him and maybe getting the dialogue started. And you can pass him off to whoever you want, but I'll reach out to him directly so that, maybe we get him involved in some of these youth, mentoring type programs with the players and with him, which, I'm a big advocate of.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that. And also my classmate that graduated with me, Raleigh Jackson, is a new coach on the football team as well. So
then you know what?
I just ran into him outside Jimmy John's a few weeks ago.
Then I'm going to let you do what you do. And if that's your classmate, I'm going to remind you of your obligation to each other. So I'm not going to get involved. I'll let you do it unless you need my help.
That's fine. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Yeah, but great. But this is another great way, just like, bringing the kids to the games and stuff like that, the more community outreach we have. So I appreciate that. Okay. So as we wind things up for our future agenda, a couple of things, I mentioned at the beginning that are on the mandate for CPAC. We just haven't had really the manpower to tackle everything, but I imagine we soon will. We will start working on focusing on the citizen complaint reviews, which is a mandate of CPAC that we need to start paying attention to. So I'm going to put that on the agenda for next time to start having a discussion over, what does that mean? What's our participation in that? Because, our guidelines are very clear. We should be able to get statistics, and then, how do we dive deeper if we need to? And then community policing initiatives. This isn't a knock on anything anybody does, but what we've not really heard that, we've not really been involved in that part of it. There's the community engagement, which is a lot of, what skeptics would call public relations, the cutting the ribbons and the good things. But community policing is more than just that, which everybody on here knows. And so really starting to get involved with, okay, can we get updates on community policing initiatives and maybe even recommendations, things like, Chief, I know you and I worked on the bike patrol, that's to me, community policing 101. If you're doing a ride along and your patrol call has never rolled down the window the whole ride, like on mine, that's not community policing. Community policing is engaging the people outside of your car, getting on a bike and riding through and hearing the public and being there as a member, not just at the ribbon cutting events, but the day-to-day trust that you build in a community with people who are not going to go to those events, who just see you as another, you're the guy in the corner. I see them all the time. They feel more comfortable coming up and talking to you. So
there's number one request we get when I go out in the communities is we need to get out of our cars more. We need to roll our windows down. We need to be on foot, be on bicycle, and just be more engaged and be more accessible and get to know the not just the members of our community, but their kids and their kids' names and just things like that. So just to reiterate what you're saying is we still have a long ways to go, and kind of generally that also speaks to disparities too. When the people that are in your community and you've got that real connection and the idea of problem solving. So that's where we're headed, but we have progress to make for sure.
Old days, they called it walking a beat. They didn't call it driving a car. And that was the whole theory behind it. And so one of my first initiatives I did when we created the Lens Foundation is I bought those bikes for second house. I even paid for one myself, which I think is huge. So we're, guys, as we build up, that's one of the things I really think that we can have more impact, because it's not just policies and procedures that drive racial bias, intent, execution, results. It's doing things like this. It's there's no one answer. All these put together will help with that. So those are the two agenda items coming up. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Yes, Jerry.
I went on the website and I noticed that the end of year report for 22 and the SOP report for 22 is not up yet. Wondering when that'll be up.
Jill, do we have a date? I know that Tony's been working on it. He was further ahead this year. Last year it was all kind of new, so he had to kind of create things from scratch.
Yeah.
This year he's got a much better template and a better tempo and was more ahead of it at the end of the year. But I don't have a date. Do you have a date?
No,
Jill?
I don't have a date. I know that, and same for the strategic leadership plan update, like we're still kind of being reviewed, but the information I think has been collected, and it's just a matter of making sure the proper eyes are on it and then getting it out.
But we should be able to provide.
So Paul,
go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, Paul, I just suggest that those be included in the updates. It's great if you could get us that information out earlier. And it certainly will be, because you have the, as I understand it, that you're anticipating about a 90-day time frame for the third-party assessment. That report and those two documents will be coming out about the same time. All that data will kind of run together. So it'd be helpful for us to be able to have a preview or a snapshot to be able to talk about all those things in our conversations.
Yeah, and Jill, when you send those out, just going forward, kind of a change, always just include every CPAC member. It doesn't need to go to just me and Jerry to proof before it goes out or to vet. You know, I feel that I'm equal to everybody else on here. So if I can see it, they can see it. And it just cuts out the middleman of me not looking on who got it, who didn't get it. Oh, I forgot to send it around. Send it to everybody at once. And that, you know, makes my job easier. And we're as transparent as possible that, you know, I'm not going to look at it before they do. It was being fair that I just forward it. So you can always just, you know, anybody who's on the CPAC, send it to all of us at the same time.
So this is anything you're reviewing, like a report or a policy or
Anything,
anything you
if
want
it's
from-
specific to the policy subcommittee, well, then, you know, obviously if it's a communication, you're going over policies and procedures with that subcommittee, that's direct to the subcommittee chair, right? But if it's for, you know, if, hey, guys, we have the policy endorsed, you know, if part of our policies, I want all of CPAC to see it, to give feedback, you know, they'll coordinate through her, you know, committee to give the feedback, but, you know, those are important topics for everybody. So, you know, when there's, you know, an audit update, you know, anything like that, send it to everybody at the same time. You know, they're all qualified. We're right now, as it stands, we all sit on, I think each one of us sits on every committee anyway. So you know, it's not like we're not going to see it. I just think it's a transparency thing. Obviously, if it's a one-on-one, you know what's one-on-one versus what should go out to everybody.
So, and just a quick observation, Jillian, the public information officer has a pace in terms of releasing when's the press release on the SOP report coming out? When's the press release? When is the update on special interests or critical incident reports and things of that nature? You should make sure that we're communicated on those things. It helps us be better prepared and aware of what's going on. That's not happening now.
Yeah, I know previous people have assumed that we should be in, you know, oh, we put it on a website. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a busy guy with a very busy job that I'm not always going to 5 or 6 or 7 websites looking for stuff. You know, as a person who sits on here, if it's relevant to me, I love it when somebody lets me know. Maybe you're just sending an email saying, hey, this was published to the website, letting you guys know to go look at it. That's fine. At least I know that I'm not having to go look at 10 websites a day just to determine if anything new is there.
Okay, we'll do.
I appreciate it. And you know, listen, guys, I can't stress enough. Jill, you are awesome. You're a godsend that we have so far. You know, I think the honeymoon phase is over. So any feedback we're giving you now is legit. You know, your results are all that matter. And, you know, efforts are nice, but they don't pay the bills. The results you've provided us so far, from my perspective, have been amazing. And we do appreciate that.
Thank you. It's nice to work with all of you guys.
Yeah, so don't quit. And keep
Not planning on it.
No, well, from our perspective so far, I think you're doing great. Okay, any questions, comments, concerns before I go eat my second dinner? Thanks, everybody. You guys have a great night.
That's what Twan's hand was up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Twan.
Thank you. I figured you were trying to move to an adjournment. So I was going to do a motion for adjournment, even though we don't have a quorum. So you may have to make executive privilege to bring this meeting to a close.
I'm gonna turn over the privilege to you, Miss Swan, because you know you still need to have that. I love that one. I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. I'm gonna adjourn the meeting at 9:12. And thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Good night.